Slavery. It's a word that evokes images of chains, plantations, and brutal oppression. It's a dark chapter in human history, one we'd rather forget. But here's the thing, slavery didn't end with the signing of emancipation proclamations. It didn't vanish with the abolition of the transatlantic slave trade. Slavery is the systematic exploitation of others for personal gain. It's about power, control, and dehumanization. It's about treating human beings as commodities, stripping them of their dignity and freedom. And it's still happening right now in the 21st century. Slavery has taken on new, insidious forms. It hides in plain sight, thriving in the shadows of global supply chains, within our borders, and across continents. Think forced labor in sweatshops, children forced into prostitution, and migrants trapped in debt bondage. That's modern slavery. We can't afford to be naive. We can't pretend that this is a problem of the past. Slavery is a stain on our collective conscience, and it's time we wipe it clean. We like to believe in progress. We tell ourselves that humanity is constantly evolving, becoming more civilized, more enlightened. But the myth that slavery is a relic of the past is dangerous. We abolished the transatlantic slave trade. We passed laws prohibiting slavery, but slavery never truly went away. It morphed, adapting to new economic realities and societal norms. It became more insidious, more difficult to detect. The fight against slavery continues today, demanding our attention and commitment to justice. Human trafficking. It's a term often used interchangeably with smuggling or illegal immigration, but it's crucial to understand the distinction. Human trafficking is the recruitment, transportation, or harboring of individuals by force, coercion, or deception for the purpose of exploitation. Imagine being promised a good job, only to find yourself trapped in forced labor or sexual exploitation. That's the reality of human trafficking. It's a global criminal enterprise that generates billions of dollars annually, preying on the most vulnerable members of society. Traffickers use violence, threats, and manipulation to control their victims. Forced labor is the beating heart of modern slavery. It's the exploitation of individuals compelled to work against their will, often under threat of punishment or violence. It's the backbone of many industries, from agriculture and fishing to construction and manufacturing. Think about the clothes you wear, the food you eat, the electronics you use. The chances are high that somewhere along the supply chain, forced labor was involved. It's a hidden cost of our insatiable appetite for cheap goods and services. Workers are often lured with false promises of good wages and decent working conditions, only to find themselves trapped in exploitative situations. They're forced to work long hours, often in hazardous conditions for little or no pay. They're denied basic rights and freedoms, living in constant fear of retaliation if they speak out. Forced labor is a global scourge affecting millions of people worldwide. It's time we shine a light on this injustice and demand transparency and accountability from the corporations that profit from it. Section 5. Debt Bondage, the Chains of Indebtedness. Debt bondage is a cruel form of modern slavery that traps individuals in a cycle of servitude and exploitation. It starts with a loan, often for a small amount of money, taken out to cover basic needs like medical expenses, education, or even just food. The catch? The loan comes with exorbitant interest rates and exploitative terms that make it nearly impossible to repay. The debtor becomes trapped, forced to work for the lender, to pay off an ever-growing debt. Generations of families can be caught in this vicious cycle, their lives and labor controlled by the lender. They're often subjected to physical abuse, threats, and intimidation, their movements restricted, and their basic rights denied. Debt bondage thrives in poverty-stricken communities where access to fair credit is limited. It's a modern form of indentured servitude that robs individuals of their dignity, freedom, and hope for a better future. Section 6. Child Slavery, an Unforgivable Reality. Child slavery is a stark reminder of the depths of human cruelty. It's the exploitation of children for someone else's gain, robbing them of their childhood, education, and basic human rights. It's a global epidemic that knows no borders, affecting millions of children worldwide. Children are forced into hazardous labor, denied an education, and subjected to horrific abuse. They're trafficked for sexual exploitation, forced into begging, and even recruited as child soldiers. The reasons for child slavery are complex, ranging from poverty and lack of opportunity to conflict and discrimination. But one thing is clear: It's an abomination that must be eradicated. We cannot stand idly by while children are robbed of their futures. We must demand stronger laws, better enforcement, and a collective commitment to protecting the most vulnerable members of our society. Section 7. The Faces of Modern Slavery. Real stories, real pain. Behind the statistics, beyond the headlines, are real people whose lives have been shattered by modern slavery. There's the young woman trafficked from her village in Southeast Asia, promised a job as a waitress, only to find herself forced into prostitution. There's the migrant worker trapped in debt bondage on a farm in the United States, his passport confiscated, his wages withheld, his dreams of a better life crushed under the weight of exploitation. There's the child laborer in a cocoa plantation in West Africa, working long hours in dangerous conditions, denied an education, and robbed of his childhood. These are not just isolated incidents. They're the everyday realities of modern slavery. These stories remind us of the human cost of this crime, the pain, the suffering, and the enduring legacy of trauma that it leaves behind. They compel us to listen, to learn, and to act. Section 8. The numbers tell a story. Statistics of modern slavery. The sheer scale of modern slavery is staggering. According to the International Labor Organization, over 40 million people are trapped in some form of modern slavery today. That's more people than the entire population of Canada. Over 25% of those trapped in modern slavery are children. The Asia-Pacific region accounts for the largest number of people in forced labor, followed by Africa and the Americas. These numbers are a wake-up call, a stark reminder that this is not a problem confined to a particular region or demographic. It's a global crisis that demands a global response. These statistics are more than just numbers. They represent real lives, real suffering, and a stark indictment of our collective failure to eradicate this crime against humanity. Section 9. Why modern slavery persists. Unraveling the Roots. Modern slavery persists for a multitude of reasons, each one a thread in the complex tapestry of this global issue. Poverty, lack of education, and limited economic opportunities create a fertile ground for exploitation. Corruption, weak governance, and inadequate law enforcement create an environment where traffickers and slaveholders can operate with impunity. Globalization and complex supply chains make it difficult to track the origins of goods and services, allowing forced labor to thrive in the shadows. Furthermore, discrimination based on race, ethnicity, caste, and gender fuels vulnerability and marginalization, making certain groups more susceptible to exploitation. Addressing modern slavery requires tackling these root causes, dismantling the systems that perpetuate inequality and injustice. It's a daunting task, but one we cannot afford to ignore. Section 10. Combating modern slavery, a collective responsibility. The fight against modern slavery is a collective responsibility that demands a multifaceted approach. Governments must enact and enforce stronger laws, prosecute traffickers and slaveholders, and protect victims. Businesses must ensure transparency and accountability within their supply chains, working to eradicate forced labor and exploitation. Consumers can make informed choices, supporting ethical brands and advocating for corporate responsibility. Civil society organizations play a crucial role in raising awareness, providing support to survivors, and pushing for systemic change. Education is key to prevention, equipping individuals with the knowledge and skills to identify and resist exploitation. Combating modern slavery requires a collaborative effort, one that transcends borders, sectors, and ideologies. It's a shared responsibility, a moral imperative, and a testament to our commitment to a just and equitable world. Section 11. A call to action, breaking the chains of indifference. The fight against modern slavery is not a spectator sport. It demands our active participation. We cannot afford to be passive observers, content to shake our heads at headlines and move on with our lives. We must educate ourselves about the issue, using our voices to raise awareness and challenge complacency. We can support organizations working on the front lines, donating our time, skills, or resources. We can hold our elected officials accountable, demanding stronger laws and better enforcement. We can make informed choices as consumers, supporting businesses that prioritize ethical sourcing and fair labor practices. Every action, no matter how small, contributes to the collective effort to dismantle this system of exploitation. Silence is complicity. Indifference is unacceptable. The time for action is now. Let's break the chains of modern slavery and build a world where every human being is free.